So a while back, I made a few videos showing this Nintendo Classic console that has every Nintendo game and this Super Nintendo Classic console that has every Super Nintendo game. So as soon as I got this Genesis Mini that has every Genesis game, also from RetroVideo.games, I knew I had to make a video about it. Now, I was always into Nintendo more than Sega back in the day, something I'm going to talk more about in a later video, but I have to say right off the bat, this Genesis Mini system is freaking awesome. Like the Nintendo Mini consoles, I remember when this Genesis version came out a few years ago, but I never went out and bought one. So before I recently played this one, it had been nearly 25 years since I last played any Sega Genesis games. Even so, I still remember a lot of the Genesis games that I played back in the day, and I also have an old original Sega Genesis console that I bought just for this video. So in this video, I'm going to show you how this mini system plays compared to an original Genesis console, but first I'm going to quickly go over what comes in the Genesis Mini package, which is the console, 2 controllers, a power adapter, and an HDMI cable. Okay, let's play some games. So everything is hooked up, and just like the mini Nintendo consoles, it's a very simple process. You just plug in a few cables and you're ready to go. As you can see, I'm playing this Genesis Mini through a nice old school CRT television because that is how all of these classic older games were meant to be played, and that's how I prefer to play them. Even though you can use whatever TV you want, whether it's an older CRT or a newer television. The first cool thing about all these mini systems, and this same thing happened when I first fired up the Nintendo Minis, is it's just so freaking cool to have every Genesis game that was ever released. Well, every North American game at least. And to get to all of these games, you just scroll down to this More Games folder, and there you go. There are supposed to be around 800 Genesis games on this system, and how cool is it to have all of these games? Every Genesis game is right here, ready to play. So, let's see, what am I going to play first today? Well, since this video is about a Genesis, I think it's only appropriate to jump right into some original Sonic the Hedgehog. And as you can see, it has every Sonic game, which is super cool, but let's start with the original. Now, this was a game I had back in the day on the original console, and while it was never a favorite of mine, it's still a pretty cool game. And on this mini system, it plays great. I'm definitely a little rusty. Remember, until I got this mini Genesis, I hadn't played a Genesis game in around 25 years, but Sonic seems to play just like the original. And I realize that the CRT television might not look absolutely great in this video, but trust me when I say that it looks freaking fantastic in real life. It looks much better with these older games than a newer TV, even though honestly, the games on all of these mini systems still look really good when using a modern TV as well. And just like the mini Nintendo systems, you can save a game at any point and immediately jump back in whenever you're ready. On this Genesis, you just hold the start button to load the save screen, and you can save your progress at any point, which is obviously a very helpful feature. So now I'm just gonna jump into, let's see. That's one of the problems when you have all of these games, is figuring out what you want to play. I know what I want to play. Let's jump into some Aladdin. Now, this is a game that I remember playing way more than Sonic, and I remember how awesome it was back in the early 90s when it was released. And just like with Sonic, the game looks great, it sounds great, it plays great. And another cool thing about this Genesis I want to mention, and again, the same thing with the Nintendo Minis, it comes with 2 actual Genesis controllers. For me, when I play Nintendo, I want a Nintendo controller, and when I play Genesis, I want a Genesis controller. These controllers are what you're supposed to use when playing these games, and obviously that's what we used back in the day. I think using some kind of weird universal 50-button controller to play old school Nintendo games or Genesis games is garbage. I like the original controllers, so I like that it comes with these old school Genesis controllers. They look and feel just like the original Genesis controllers. So I'm just going to play a couple more games, and then we're going to do a cool little experiment. But first, let's jump into some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Hyperstone Heist, another totally classic TMNT game that I remember from way back in the day. And again, the game looks great. The graphics are just like the original. It sounds great. It plays great. I don't notice any kind of lag with the controllers or anything, which is obviously important. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Hyperstone Heist is just as awesome as it was on the original Genesis all those years ago. So now let's try some Street Fighter II Special Champion Edition, which was actually the last game I remember playing on an original Sega Genesis console. And surprise, surprise, it looks, sounds, and plays just as great as I remember. I will say, this version of Street Fighter II compared to the version on my Super Nintendo Mini, which I've played quite a bit over the past year, seems to be a bit harder without changing the difficulty settings. Or maybe I'm just sucking today, but as you can see, Chun-Li ain't making it easy for me. She's definitely making me look bad in my video here, and she's only the first opponent. But yeah, the game looks great, sounds great, and plays great, and I would have no idea. And I would bet that most people would also have no idea. In fact, not even most people. I would bet no one, if you just handed them a controller and told them to play Street Fighter II Champion Edition, would have any idea that this isn't the original Genesis game cartridge. They would just be playing Street Fighter II and probably having a pretty good time. Now I want to jump into this experiment, which will be perfect since I already have Street Fighter II loaded up on the Mini, and I also actually do have an original cartridge. So here you can see how the original Street Fighter II looks on the original Sega Genesis. And here is a direct comparison with the Genesis Mini version. Can you tell which version is which? Here the Genesis Mini is on the left and the original Genesis version is on the right. Oh, wait a minute. I have that backwards. The Genesis Mini is actually on the right and the original Genesis is on the left. So as you can see, it's pretty difficult to tell which is which, right? And honestly, and this might not be the case if I spent more time playing the original cartridge, but to me, the game looks even better coming from the Mini. But even more importantly, the controls feel better on the Mini, which is actually very, very surprising. But as you can see here, I was having some trouble pulling off some of the moves playing the original cartridge. And trust me when I say that I'm not new to Street Fighter II, even though Chun-Li was making me look like a complete amateur a few minutes ago. So I'm not really sure what that's about, what's going on there with the controls. And here, let's try the same experiment with Sonic the Hedgehog, since I also happen to have an original cartridge of that game as well. And as you can see, the cartridge is not working. And this is one of the main reasons I wanted to get all of these mini systems that have every game in the first place, because all of my original hardware is starting to fail in some way or another. The games barely work or don't work at all, or there's audio and video glitches, and one of my original Super Nintendo controllers now has issues where buttons sometimes don't work. So the point is, if you only have original consoles and games, they will probably completely stop working at some point as time rolls on, especially older stuff like this original Genesis, which is now almost 40 years old. That's why I went ahead and just got all of these mini systems, because I love playing these older games, and now I have all of the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Genesis games, and I don't have to worry about old hardware failing or giving me issues. So having these is really nice. And I'll put the link in the description where you can get these, since so many people usually ask. But now I have the game working. And again, as you can see, both look and sound almost identical. And even though you can experience it through the video, the controls feel identical as well. I can't tell any difference using the Genesis Mini controller compared to the original controller when playing these games. The Mini controllers look and feel identical to the original controllers. They even seem to weigh the same. They might be a tad bit lighter, but not enough to make any kind of a difference. So here the Mini is on the left and the original console is on the right, and you can clearly see that there's this weird thin strip of blue on the top and bottom of the screen coming from the original game, and that isn't there on the Mini version. To me, it looks like on the original console, the image is maybe a bit brighter and sharper, but honestly, I think I would say the Mini looks better overall. But it really doesn't matter that much, both games are fine. But still, you can see that the Mini is an excellent console and looks great. And real quick, I'll just do one more quick test since I have an original cartridge. And here we go again. The cartridge isn't working, so you have to use the old trick that anyone who had these games back in the day knows very well to get it to work. But the problem is, I have games where that trick no longer works. The games are just dead now, even after thoroughly cleaning them. But anyway, luckily this one still works and finally booted up, and here you can see Alien 3, and can you tell which is which? It should be pretty obvious by this point because of the way the Mini fills the television screen and the original console doesn't, but the original console is on the left and the Mini is on the right. And just like the other games, they both look great, and I doubt anyone would know which is which if it wasn't pointed out to them. And Alien 3 is such a great game on both the Genesis and Super Nintendo. I'm gonna really enjoy going back and playing this Genesis version. So overall, I am extremely happy with this Genesis Mini. The games look and sound almost exactly the same as the originals, the controls are fantastic, and best of all, it has every freaking Sega Genesis game. The Mortal Kombat Blood Code even still works. And it really can't get any better than that, now can it? This has been a great addition to my old school video game setup, and now when people come over, not only can we play any Nintendo or Super Nintendo game we want to play, using the original proper controllers, just like we used back in the day, but we can also play any Genesis game, just like it was the late 80s and early 90s all over again. So if you've been wanting to play some great classic Genesis games, I would definitely recommend this Sega Genesis Mini. I give it 2 big thumbs up, and you can grab one for yourself at retrovideo.games. As always, I'll leave a link in the video description.